Today's lesson is Module 3, Lesson 15. We're going to focus on 0 today. But before we get started, I want you to go ahead and get another coordinate plane to put into your notes because we're going to review a few things from yesterday's lesson. Please make sure when you glue this in that you're gluing it in the correct way. Make sure that you have positive 10 at the top and positive 10 to the right. So real quickly, we're going to review that the line that goes up and down is our y-axis. That is that vertical number line. Our horizontal number line, if you remember correctly, is our x-axis. We also talked yesterday about this center point where the two lines touch is called the origin, and we're going to talk a lot more about the origin today. We also learned yesterday, and we will get more into this lesson today, in our lesson today too, that this is quadrant 1. And remember, we note that with a Roman numeral, which is a capital I. I'm going to put a 1 underneath of that for your reference. And it goes backwards. So this is quadrant 2, which is 2 capital I's. And then below that is quadrant 3. And then the final one is quadrant 4, and that's capital I-V. So that was a review, just a real quick review of yesterday's notes. We also learned yesterday that ordered pairs are written as x comma y. So this first one will be your x coordinate, which is on the x-axis. And so you will go left or right. If you go left, that number is negative. If you go right, your number is positive. I guess I should have made sure you were able to see what I was writing, so I'll give you a second to catch that up. The y is referred to the y coordinate. It is on the y-axis, and you will either move down or up. If you go down, that number is negative. If you go up, that number is positive. So that's a review from yesterday. Now today we are going to talk about 0 as a coordinate. If 0 is the first coordinate, then the point will be on the x-axis. So let's look back over here at this coordinate plane. If the first number in my ordered pair is a 0, then my x will stay here, and I made a mistake. Let's go back and change something real quick. I should have said y-axis. I apologize. Got a little bit ahead of myself. So let's review that again. If 0 is your first coordinate, your point will fall on this y-axis. It will stay on this middle vertical number line. And so now we're going to write the opposite of that. If 0 is the first coordinate, if 0 is the second, if 0 is the second coordinate, then the point will be on the x-axis. So now let's take a look at this coordinate plane that we have. So if 0 is your second number, then your point will stay on this horizontal number line, this x-axis. So now I want you to go ahead and take out your student work, and we're going to go over a few examples and do a few things together in the student provided work. The very first thing we're going to do in this first example is we're going to make a rough sketch of a coordinate plane. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to draw a horizontal number line through that point, and I want you to label it the x-axis. We are going to label that middle as the origin. Remember, the origin is 0, 0. That's the coordinates of the origin. Next, I want you to make a vertical number line. And remember that this is the y-axis. We're going to label each quadrant. This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And if you would like the other numbers beside it just as a reference point until you learn those first 4 Roman numerals, then that is fine. Now we're going to talk about what we kind of touched on in our notes. If you remember, in our notes we said that this x-axis, we talked about if it went to the right, it was positive because these are all positive numbers. And we all know that the top of our vertical number line is also positive numbers. So if a number, or if ordered pairs fall here in this area, we would only be using positive numbers. So both of those numbers would be positive. Now let's take a look at quadrant 2. We are already using the numbers on this top part of the vertical number line, and so then we would be using numbers on the negative side of the horizontal line. And we always name our x first, so that would be a negative number and then a positive number. And then on to quadrant 3. We have this portion already filled out, so now we just need to fill out this bottom portion of the negative part of our vertical number line. So we are using negative and negative numbers. And then finally over here in our fourth quadrant, we are using positive numbers and negative numbers. So positive first, then negative. And then I just want to point something out. If you take a look, you can see that they're opposite. So quadrant 1 are both positive. Quadrant 3 are both negative. Quadrant 2 is negative, then positive, and then quadrant 3 is positive, then negative. So that's just something to maybe help you remember. Move on to example 2. In example 2, it says all points on the coordinate plane are described with a reference to the origin. What is the origin and what are its coordinates? So if we take a look back up here where we drew our rough sketch, you can see that the origin is where the X and the Y intersect or cross. So I would say the origin is the point where the X axis and the Y axis intersect. And that word means cross. The coordinates of the origin are 0, 0 because it lies exactly in the middle of our coordinate plane. This example continues on to say, to describe location of points on the coordinate plane, we use ordered pairs. Remember, ordered pairs are the two numbers that we put together in order to give an exact location on a coordinate plane. So those are our XY numbers. So XY numbers, that's what that is. Order is important. So on the coordinate plane, we use the form X, Y. The first coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the X-axis. And the second point represents the point's location from 0 on the Y-axis. Remember, you can pause this video anytime that you need to in order to make sure that you are understanding. Feel free to pause, rewind, take some time to really look things over and make sure you are understanding. I'm going to write some things out on here and then I'm going to really zoom in on this coordinate plane so that you can see what I'm doing. So for exercise 1 through 3, and we're actually going to skip 3 today. We're going to focus on exercises 1 and 2. It says use the coordinate plane to answers A through C. And for A, it says graph 5 points on the x-axis and label their coordinates. So I'm going to actually give you 5 points that I want you to graph. And then we will pause for you to do that. So for point A, the coordinates are 0, 8. For B, it's 0, 5. For C, it's 0, 3. For D, it's 0, -4. And for E, it's 0, -8. But I'm going to zoom in real quick on this coordinate plane because I want to show you how to number this, because we are tempted to number in the spaces because it makes it easier to read. But the problem with that is then your locations would be off. So we're going to start with the positive numbers on the x-axis. Remember, this is x. And the up-down is y. So I labeled that y. So we're going to first start off by putting in our positive numbers. And I usually will slant my 1 because otherwise I can't see it. And you'll notice that I'm writing it right on those lines. And then when I'm counting up on the y, I'm going to put it on those lines. Let me zoom way in so you can see that, how I did that. Now we're going to label the negative side. And I will usually put that negative sign inside that first box. The negative numbers seem to be the hardest to label because you have to put in that negative symbol. So it takes up so much space. And then going down, I usually put my negative sign on the opposite side of that line so that I have enough room. You're welcome to pause the video here to do this. Take whatever time you need. So now I'm going to zoom out. So we're going to do the first one together and then I'm going to pause and let you finish up. So 0, 8. So since my first number is 0, remember 0 is my origin. So I start at this dot and I don't move because it's 0. And then 8, it's positive, so I go up. Sorry about that interruption. I guess that's what happens when you record your videos at school. So we were at the origin because our first number was 0. And because my next number is 8 and it's positive, I'm going to go all the way up to the 8 and I'm going to put a 0. And then I'm going to label that A. So go ahead now and finish labeling B, C, D, and E. Okay, let's check and make sure that you have all the points. You should have had a point at 8 on the y-axis, a point at 5, a point at 3, a point at -4, and a point at -8. So it says, what do the coordinates in your points have in common? We could say the x coordinate is 0. And what must be true about any point that lies on the x-axis? This should say y-axis. Let's correct that. Even the book makes mistakes. So what must be true about any point that lies on the y-axis? That the x coordinate is 0. Oh, you know what? Here's the problem. I started off on the wrong axis. I had you graph on the y-axis. So let's change these. Sorry, Miss Parker is not quite awake this morning. Let's go on to number 2. And so we're going to have to change this because I worked backwards. If you're in my class, you are probably used to that. So now we're going to graph some more points that I give you. So F will be -8, 0. G will be -5, 0. H will be -1, 0. I will be 3, 0. And J will be 6, 0. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes and I want you to go ahead and graph all of those points. Okay, so go ahead and check your points. You should have had a point at -8, a point at -5, a point at -1, and then a point at 3, and then a point at 6. So what do all of our coordinates have in common? The y coordinate is 0. And what must be true about any point that lies on the x-axis? We would say the y coordinate is 0. We're going to skip number 3, and we're going to go on to example 3. For example 3, all we're doing is numbering the quadrants. We understand that this word quadrant gets its name because there are 4 parts, and we label those 4 parts. This is quadrant 1. This is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Let's go on to exercises 4 through 6. In exercise 4 through 6, they want you to locate and label each point described in the ordered pairs below. Indicate which of the quadrants these points would be in. I'm going to say that you don't have to put the points on here. What I want you to do is label them as both numbers are positive. So what quadrant has both numbers being positive? That's quadrant 1. I want you to do the rest B, C, D, and E the same way. I want you to tell me if the number is positive or negative, and then tell me which quadrant that would be in. So go ahead and pause your video and do that, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, let's go ahead and check your answers. For B, you should have said that it was a positive and a negative, which is quadrant 4. For C, again, it's positive and negative, so that's quadrant 4. For D, you have negative, positive, so that's quadrant 2. And for E, you have negative, negative, so that's quadrant 3. Let's go on to number 5. In number 5, I want you to just give me numbers that could be in that quadrant. So let's do one together. So let's start with quadrant 2. I know in quadrant 2, my first number has to be negative, and my second number is going to be positive. So I might say 8, -8, 3. So I want you to go ahead and do A, C, and D on your own. And you can just pause the video and then come back and check your answers. So for quadrant 1, you should have said both numbers would be positive, and then you could just give me any 2 positive numbers. I happen to choose 2 and 5. We had done B together, so now let's check C. For C, you should have said for quadrant 3, both numbers would be negative. So I chose -2 and -1. And for quadrant 4, you should have had a positive, then a negative, and so I chose numbers 6 and -4. We are not going to do number 6 at this time. I'm going to go over today's assignment with you really quick, and then you can pick this up from me. Remember also, you can always get any clarification or any help as you find it necessary. In number 1, it says, name the quadrant of which each point which each point lies. If the point does not lay on a quadrant, specify which axis it's on. So let's do number 1 together. If I have a negative number and then a positive number, what quadrant would that be in? And that would be quadrant 2. So you're going to do that for each one of these. For number 2, it says Jackie claims that points with the same x and y coordinates must lie in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Do you agree or disagree? Explain your answer. So you might have to plot a couple of those to be able to figure out that answer. For number 3, it says locate and label each set of points on the coordinate plane. Describe similarities of the ordered pairs in each set and describe the points on the plane. And then I tell you to connect each set of points to make it a line. So for A, you're going to plot negative 2, 5, negative 2, 2, negative 2, 7, negative 2, negative 3, negative 2, negative 0.8. So notice that's not quite 1, so it's just a little bit short of negative 1. So you're going to plot all of these points and then connect them together with a line. And then down here, you're going to tell me the similarities for A. And then you'll plot B, connect those with a line, and then you will tell me what was the similarity for all the numbers in B. And then finally for C, again, you will plot all of these numbers, and you will need to tell me the similarities. You can practice numbering this coordinate plane, or if you struggle with that, feel free to pick up a coordinate plane from me and go ahead, that's already numbered, and go ahead and put it on the back side of the paper. You can glue it or tape it on and then plot those points on the back. It's your choice. If you plot the numbers on the back, please just put a note on this coordinate plane so that I'm aware of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me and ask.